I found out about Mom's birthday dinner from Instagram. A photo, warm light, fancy plates, laughter frozen in time, landed on my feed like a slap. There was Bella in a pale blue dress, Dad at the head of the table, grinning too wide, Mom, older now but still beautiful in that quiet, tired way. And me? I wasn't there. Again. I stared at the picture until the screen dimmed. No one had called, no one had texted, and I already knew why. Dad. He'd made it clear years ago that I was not welcome at family functions, his words. He'd even said it with a chuckle once, like it was some inside joke I didn't get. I was 18 then, I'm 24 now, and that joke? Yeah, it's still running. Maybe next time, Bella had once said softly during Mom's birthday last year. But I stopped believing in next times. Not with them. It wasn't like I'd done something terrible, no drugs, no crime, no scandal. Just, I didn't go to the college Dad picked. I didn't take the business internship he lined up through one of his friends. I didn't follow the script. So he rewrote me as the black sheep. He always had a talent for control. The way he turned silence into punishment, the way he could charm a room while crushing someone's spirit just beneath the surface. To outsiders, he was involved, funny, devoted, but I knew him as the man who called my ideas cute. Who called my ambitions delusions. Who said one night when I told him I wanted to build something of my own, "You'll be lucky if you can afford your own Wi-Fi." That one stayed with me, so no. I didn't get the invitation to the birthday dinner. And no, I wasn't surprised, but it still hit me like it always does, that ache of watching people you love celebrate without you, like you're some cautionary tale they'd rather not acknowledge. I got up from my desk, paced a little. The loft was quiet, just the hum of my second monitor glowing faintly with lines of code. I'd been debugging a client's platform all day, a healthcare app that was finally taking off. Irony is, if Dad ever needed a developer, his company would probably be knocking at my door without even realizing it was mine. I picked up my phone. No messages. Then, out of some strange mix of pettiness and longing, I opened my camera and took a picture of my workspace. Dual monitors, a stack of notes, a screen showing our latest product demo hitting 100,000 downloads. I almost posted it. Caption: missed dinner, built something instead. But I deleted it. I don't need their applause. Still, a part of me wanted someone to know I wasn't just sitting alone because I was forgotten. I was building something. Something real. And then, as if summoned by the universe, my phone buzzed. Eli. Hey, weird question. Is your last name Bennett? My brows furrowed. Eli? The quiet but brilliant front-end guy I hired 6 months ago through our anonymous recruiter? We'd only spoken via Slack and email. Never about personal stuff. Me? Yeah, why? The dots danced. Because I think I just had dinner with your family, and your dad made some interesting comments. Also, your sister Bella? She's my girlfriend. I just stared at the screen, heart skipping. And just so you know, I didn't laugh. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every line of that message from Eli. He didn't laugh. 6 months of working with him, and I had no idea he was that Eli, Bella's boyfriend. The guy my family had apparently been talking about for weeks. Sweet, driven, polite, maybe the one. I hadn't paid attention. I'd stopped asking, but now he knew who I was, and more importantly, he knew what I'd become. The truth is, I hadn't always been this person. This boss. The one who leads a team, signs contracts and speaks at panels. That version of me was carved out of nights spent on the floor of a shared apartment, coding until my wrists ached. I had no safety net. No family backup, just a cracked screen laptop, a cheap coffee pot, and pure, bitter determination. I remember the first time Dad laughed when I told him I was freelancing. "You're gonna make money online?" he said, like I'd just told him I was joining a circus. I remember Bella being there, silent. She always was back then. I think she loved me, in her own way, but she also loved the comfort of being in Dad's good graces, and who could blame her? In our house, love came with conditions. The kind you didn't notice until you broke one. I broke all of them. I dropped out of the university he paid for. I gave up the internship he landed through some golf course buddy. I packed my things in the middle of the night and left a note on the kitchen table that said, "I'm gonna figure out who I am, without you." I still remember the silence that followed. No texts, no calls. Just one email from Mom, a week later. "I hope you're okay, I wish I understood." But she didn't ask me to come back. I was 19 when I landed my first real contract, building a back-end system for a small startup that ended up going under 6 months later. But I got paid, and I built a portfolio. One job led to another. I taught myself UI UX through YouTube tutorials and trial-by-fire mistakes. I learned what a product manager actually did. I failed a lot, but each time, I got better. At 21, I registered my own LLC. At 22, I signed my first non-friend client. At 23, I had 5 employees, remote, freelance, but loyal. And by 24, I was pulling 6 figures. Still working out of a cheap loft, still making my own coffee, but free and whole. I told no one. No Christmas cards with updates, no LinkedIn flexing, no Thanksgiving dinners to smile through. Because the version of me that Dad hated, the rebel, the disappointment, the dropout, that version never died. She just evolved. And part of me liked keeping it that way, like I was growing in secret, like revenge, but slower. Then came Eli. In his messages he was careful, kind. He didn't want to make it awkward, said he hadn't known until dinner, when Bella showed him a picture of me on the fridge. I knew the name sounded familiar, he said, but I figured Bennett was a common last name. I asked him, half joking, so, did my dad say anything nice? He didn't reply for a while. Then, he said you were a cautionary tale. He said you were probably working at a call center now, or worse, trying to be an influencer. Then he made a toast to second chances and looked at Bella. I didn't cry. Not then, but something in me cracked open, like the quiet snap of a frozen branch. Not from hurt, but from clarity. I had spent 5 years letting their silence define me. Maybe it was time they heard my voice again, even if it wasn't from my mouth. I used to wonder what version of me Dad told people about. Not just to strangers, he barely needed those anymore, but to the people I once called family. His co-workers, his friends, the aunts who used to send birthday cards, even to Bella and Mom, who once knew me better than anyone. Over the years, the image of me that lived in his mouth grew twisted, crooked at the edges, like a reflection in a broken mirror, pieces of truth distorted into something pitiful, something small. She couldn't handle pressure. That one came from my cousin, who visited once and never again. She said Dad mentioned it when someone brought up my name over dinner, like a footnote. She had big dreams but no grit, he'd said, as if that were some objective assessment, not the voice of a man who refused to see me stand without him. She just wanted to be famous. That one came from Bella, years ago. We were fighting, and she said it without thinking. Or maybe she had thought it. Maybe she'd heard it so often that it became true to her. It didn't matter, because every lie told about me became a truth by default, because I wasn't there to defend myself. And I didn't want to be. I thought keeping my head down and succeeding quietly would be enough, that the winds would speak louder than their words. But the truth is, silence isn't always golden. Sometimes, silence is surrender. I never told them when I got my first write-up in a tech blog. I never told them when we hit our first 10,000 user mark. When we launched version 2.0, when we got seed funding. When I started being asked to speak on panels with people who wore nicer shoes than I could afford. Because a part of me still feared what Dad would say. He had a way of mocking things you loved, not by attacking them outright, but by turning them into a joke so small no one could take them seriously again. I remember once, I showed him a design I made. I was 14. It was for a class project, an app to help organize homework. He barely looked at it. This looks like a to-do list for losers, he said without pausing his game of online poker. That moment dug a hole in me, a place I kept burying every accomplishment in, just in case someone tried to laugh at it. So, when Eli told me what Dad had said about the call center, the influencer nonsense, I didn't feel shock, or even rage. I just felt tired. Like hearing the same old insult with a new coat of paint. I went to my desk and opened the admin panel for our app. There it was, 173,242 active users, 41 companies subscribed, 8 employees, and his daughter was the one running it all. I clicked open our internal dashboard and pulled up Eli's name. Underneath it, Senior UI Lead reports to me. It almost made me laugh, the kind of laughter that doesn't come from joy, but from irony. Dad had turned me into a ghost in his life. But his favorite child's boyfriend? He answered to me. It wasn't revenge, not really. It was just truth, finally catching up. Later that night Bella texted me. Just 3 words. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time. I didn't know if she meant to apologize or explain or ask me to stay quiet about Eli, but I did know one thing. The version of me she thought she knew was long gone. And I wasn't going to hide anymore. Bella was never cruel, not the way Dad was, sharp-tongued and deliberate. She was softer, quieter in her betrayal. Like a breeze that closes a door and leaves you wondering if it was ever open to begin with. When she messaged me, "Can we talk?" I waited 6 hours before replying. Me, sure, call whenever. She didn't. Not that night, not the next. But a week later, a call came through while I was eating leftover ramen and answering Slack pings. Her name on the screen made my stomach drop. I answered with a cautious, "Hey." "Hey," she said, her voice a little shaky. "So, I guess Eli told you?" "Yeah." Silence. Then, "He didn't know. I mean, about you. He doesn't really use social media, and I guess you never mentioned your last name at work?" "Nope, never came up." More silence. I could hear her breathing. She always did that, held her breath when she was nervous, like she was bracing for an explosion that might never come. "I didn't mean for you to find out that way," she said. "What way?" "Dad, the dinner. What he said." I paused. "So you were there when he said it?" She didn't answer right away. That told me enough. "You could have stopped him, Bella." "I know," she said, voice cracking. "I should have. I didn't know how," that line. I didn't know how. It was her anthem, the chorus of our childhood. She didn't know how to speak up when Dad yelled at me. Didn't know how to stop him from throwing my laptop once. Didn't know how to ask me if I was okay when I moved out and never looked back. I didn't say any of that. Instead, I asked, "Did you know Eli works for me?" Her breath caught. "Wait, what?" "Yeah, since January. I interviewed him myself. He's good, smart, reliable." I could hear her trying to process it. "So you're, like, his manager?" "I'm his boss?" And then came the silence I'd been waiting for, the kind that said everything just shifted. She let out a soft laugh. "Wow, that explains a lot." "Like what?" "He's always talking about how much he respects his team lead, how his company's run by someone young but sharp, someone who actually listens." I thought he was being dramatic. I smiled despite myself. Guess I make a decent impression behind a screen. There was a long pause, then she said, "You really did it, huh?" "I did. Without Dad, without us." I didn't know how to answer that, so she asked something else. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "I didn't think anyone wanted to know," I said. And honestly, I liked the peace. The silence wasn't warm, but at least it was mine. Bella sniffled. "I miss you." That hit harder than I expected, because I missed her too. Or at least I missed the version of her I used to believe in. "I'm still here," I said softly. "Just different now." "Is there any chance you'd come to Mom's belated dinner next week?" she asked. "I know Dad probably wouldn't love it, but it's at Mom's place this time. Not his. She told me she wants to see you." I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure I could, but I did know one thing. If I showed up now, I wouldn't be arriving as the outcast. I'd be arriving as the woman who'd become everything they said I couldn't. I didn't plan to go. Even after Bella's call, even after hearing that Mom wanted to see me, I still couldn't shake the feeling that I'd be walking into a lion's den, just wearing nicer shoes. But then Eli messaged me again. "Eli, hey, so I'm going to that dinner Bella mentioned. Thought you should know. If you decide to come, I've got your back." I stared at the message, half smiling. It wasn't just support, it was witness. Someone who knew the whole picture. Someone who had sat across from my dad, listened to the lies, and said, "That's not who she is." It was enough. So I went. I wore black slacks and a navy blazer. Clean lines, confident but not flashy. Just enough to say I know who I am now. The dinner was at Mom's condo. I hadn't been there in years, not since before the divorce, when things were still quietly crumbling under our feet. She'd repainted the walls a soft sage, added string lights along the back patio. Everything looked smaller than I remembered, except for the nerves in my chest. Those felt huge. I rang the doorbell, half expecting someone to open it and slam it shut again. Instead, it was Mom. She blinked when she saw me. Then her eyes welled up. "I didn't think you'd come," she whispered. "I wasn't sure I would," I said honestly. She didn't try to hug me, just smiled, a little fragile around the edges, and stepped aside. I smiled despite myself. Guess I make a decent impression behind a screen. There was a long pause. Then she said, "You really did it, huh?" I did. Without Dad. Without us. I didn't know how to answer that, so she asked something else. Why didn't you tell anyone? I didn't think anyone wanted to know, I said. And honestly, I liked the peace. The silence wasn't warm, but at least it was mine. Bella sniffled. I miss you. That hit harder than I expected, because I missed her too. Or at least, I missed the version of her I used to believe in. I'm still here, I said softly. Just different now. Is there any chance you'd come to Mom's belated dinner next week? She asked. I know Dad probably wouldn't love it, but it's at Mom's place this time, not his. She told me she wants to see you. I didn't answer right away. I wasn't sure I could. But I did know one thing: if I showed up now, I wouldn't be arriving as the outcast. I'd be arriving as the woman who'd become everything they said I couldn't. I didn't plan to go. Even after Bella's call, even after hearing that Mom wanted to see me, I still couldn't shake the feeling that I'd be walking into a lion's den, just wearing nicer shoes. But then Eli messaged me again. Eli, hey, so I'm going to that dinner Bella mentioned. Thought you should know. If you decide to come, I've got your back. I stared at the message, half smiling. It wasn't just support, it was witness. Someone who knew the whole picture. Someone who had sat across from my dad, listened to the lies, and said that's not who she is. It was enough, so I went. I wore black slacks and a navy blazer. Clean lines, confident but not flashy, just enough to say I know who I am now. The dinner was at Mom's condo. I hadn't been there in years, not since before the divorce, when things were still quietly crumbling under our feet. She'd repainted the walls a soft sage, added string lights along the back patio. Everything looked smaller than I remembered, except for the nerves in my chest. Those felt huge. I rang the doorbell, half expecting someone to open it and slam it shut again. Instead, it was Mom. She blinked when she saw me, then her eyes welled up. I didn't think you'd come, she whispered. I wasn't sure I would, I said honestly. She didn't try to hug me, just smiled, a little fragile around the edges, and stepped aside. Inside, the dinner was already in motion. Bella waved from the dining table. Eli sat beside her, jaw tight, eyes watching me like he was ready to jump in if needed. Dad was holding a wine glass, mid-toast. And of course, he was saying, none of this would be possible without family, especially those who stuck by us through thick and thin. His eyes flicked toward Bella. Then, like a reflex, they landed on me. And he laughed. Not a real laugh, a snort of disbelief. Well, he said, loud enough for the whole table, look who decided to grace us with her presence. I thought you were too busy chasing TikTok fame or whatever it is you do now. A few polite chuckles, a few awkward glances. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Because Eli stood up, glass in hand, calm, steady, and with one simple sentence, he changed everything. She's my boss. Dead silence. Every head turned. Dad's smirk vanished like a shadow under sunlight. I'm sorry? He asked. Eli didn't flinch. Your daughter. She's my employer. She runs the company I work for. Actually, she founded it. Mom dropped her fork. Bella stared like she'd just discovered a twist ending to a movie she thought she understood. Dad tried to laugh again. You're joking? No, Eli said, his voice steel wrapped in silk. She's one of the sharpest people I've worked with. And more than that, she built something from scratch. Without shortcuts, without handouts. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. He turned to me. I didn't even know she was your daughter until last week. But I'm glad I found out, because I've never seen someone so badly misrepresented by the people who are supposed to know her best. It was the kind of silence that cracks a room open. Dad looked like he'd swallowed a nail. Bella looked proud and sad, like she knew how much of me she'd missed. And Mom looked like she was finally seeing me. Really seeing me. I took my seat without a word, and for once, no one told me I didn't belong there. It was surreal, sitting at that table. The last time I had a family meal like this, I was 17. I remember the roast was dry, and Dad spent most of the time explaining how I should really think about real estate, because coding is just a fad. I'd stayed quiet that whole night, poking at my plate, willing myself not to cry in front of him. But this time, the silence wasn't mine to carry. After Eli said those 4 words, she's my boss, it was like someone pressed pause on the entire room. Even the clinking of utensils stopped. For a moment, I wondered if I should say something, clarify, smile, shrug it off. But then I realized, this is the moment they never thought would happen. The truth didn't need embellishment. It just needed air. Dad tried to recover first. He chuckled, a dry, humorless thing. Well, that's surprising, he said. Didn't think our little rebel would end up running a company, but hey, miracles happen, right? Eli didn't laugh. Bella didn't either. I took a sip of water, cool and slow. No miracle, just hard work. Mom reached out and placed her hand lightly on mine. Why didn't you tell us? Her voice wasn't angry, just heartbroken. I looked her in the eye. Because I didn't think anyone would listen. She nodded as if that made perfect sense. As if that silence had been echoing in her too, even if she hadn't known what to call it. Dad leaned back, defensive now. You make it sound like we never supported you. You didn't, I said plainly. You mocked every decision I made. You told people I was a failure, that I'd end up lost. You turned me into a warning instead of a daughter. The words felt sharp leaving my mouth. But I didn't flinch. I didn't soften the blow, because it wasn't just about defending myself anymore. It was about reclaiming the space he'd stolen for years. Bella finally spoke. She's right, Dad. You never gave her a chance. You wrote her off before she even got started. He looked between us like he didn't recognize the people at the table anymore. Eli leaned forward, elbows on the table. Mr. Bennett, he said, respectfully but firmly, your daughter's the kind of leader most people wish they had. She built a culture where people are actually heard. She made room for people like me to grow. Then, with a glance toward Bella, he added, and the more I've gotten to know her, both professionally and personally, the more I realize how badly she's been underestimated. I saw Dad's jaw twitch. The man who had spent years narrating my life, twisting it into a punchline, was suddenly voiceless. And that was justice. The rest of dinner moved like fog. Conversations shifted, slowly. Mom asked about my company, genuinely curious. Bella tried to recall the last time we'd baked cookies together. Eli stayed close, answering questions I didn't have to. Dad barely spoke. When dessert came out, lemon pie, Mom's favorite, he stood up to leave, said he had an early meeting. Didn't look at me when he said goodbye. I didn't stop him. After the door shut, Mom turned to me. Will you come by again? I hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, I think I will. Because this time it wouldn't be as a daughter desperate to belong. It would be as someone who finally knew her worth. A week passed. Then 2. Mom called me 3 times during that stretch, sometimes just to say hi, sometimes to ask things like, do you remember the password to our old Netflix account? We both pretended not to notice how those little calls meant something bigger. I didn't hear from Dad. And honestly, that felt like a gift. For the first time in years, I wasn't scrambling to prove something to him. I wasn't clinging to his approval like a lifeline. I had let go of the version of me he had built in his head. The one who was impulsive, lost, incapable of doing anything without his help. I wasn't her anymore. Maybe I never was. What I am now is something I built with my own 2 hands. And it didn't happen all at once. It happened slowly in the quiet, in every rejection, in every slammed door, in every night I stayed up until 3 a.m., debugging a feature no one would ever see. And the best part? I'm still building. Last Thursday, our company hit 250,000 users. Eli and I celebrated with overpriced Thai takeout and terrible karaoke in my living room. He sang off-key. I laughed for the first time in weeks. Not the careful kind, but the deep, full-belly kind that feels like it shakes loose the grief you didn't know you were carrying. Bella sent me a picture the next day of an old drawing I made when I was 15, an apt sketch on the back of a receipt. She found it in a shoebox under her bed. Her text said, "You were always going to make it. I just wish I'd seen it sooner." I didn't reply right away, because there was a part of me, still healing, still cautious, that wondered how long this version of us would last. But another part, the one that survived the silence and the shame, whispered, "Let them come to you now." I'm not the cautionary tale anymore. I'm the woman who walked away when the noise got too loud and found something better in the quiet. So if you're reading this, if you've ever been told you're too much, too lost, too late, listen carefully. You are not the story they tell about you. You are the story you choose to write. And if you're still writing it, good. That means you're still growing. So go ahead, start that project, send that email, walk into that room like you own it. Because maybe one day, you will. Like I did. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been shut out of a room only to realize you didn't need their table to build your own, leave a comment below, or just share this story with someone who's still stuck in the silence. They might need a reminder that they're not alone, because sometimes the best revenge is peace.